step forwards to my shadow. You I follow in my pattern. I love.
Hello and welcome to the Ladies' Room. Today it is my pleasure to have Gordon Kelly, who has won national awards for humanitarianism and also a national award for producing. You are a man of many talents and have done many things and been many places. So welcome. We'd like to hear about it.
Thank you so much, Judy. I just want to say we had a lot of fun the other night at Stephen Joster's opening, and I brought some clips along that
Oh,
from the.
do you want to
different-
jump right
Well,
into
no,
the
but
White Room?
just as a little also. This is LTV. Back in the 1980s, my dear friend Gregory Casey helped Fraser Doherty build LTV.
I remember the beginning of LTV. We were in like a garage on Springs Fireplace.
Yep, at literally hammer and nail, and
Yeah.
he sent us down to film the book launch party for Peter Matheson's book Men's
Oh,
Lives
I love Peter
down at Addie
Matheson.
Dimmonills.
Uh-huh.
And recently I was up on Albert's Landing with a girlfriend, and I see this couple walking down the beach, and we're acknowledging, like everybody out here acknowledges each other. And I said to this man, "Are you Carl?" He goes, "Yes, I am." I said, "I met you at the book launch party." Carl Bernstein from Woodward and
Carl
Bernstein.
Bernstein used to hang out at my house.
And I said, "I met you in 1985, and I just reread this winter Men's Lives." And he
What's
said,
Carl have to do with that?
and he says, because he was at the book launch party,
Oh,
and I met you there at the book launch, said that, and he says, "It's on my coffee table now." And it's interesting because the opening, it's about the history of the first families, the farmers, the fishermen,
uh-huh.
and lion gardeners, Gardeners Island. They were over in Connecticut, trading with the Indians, doing great, the Pequot Indians, and the British had to come along and massacre them. So they knew there'd be a rip. So they had to split, and they came over to. That's when Lion Gardner came over here, and Peter Matheson also wrote another great book, Snow Leopard,
Yes.
about going up into the Himalayas and the mountains up there. But getting back to
Did you go to the meditations at his house in Sagaponic?
no, but I was
That was a
invited.
wonderful thing.
And but getting back to this humanitarian award is because I had gone up to Albany. I'd like to acknowledge Jay Schneiderman and Fred Thiel, who always had an open door for me, and I lobbied and advocated for children in foster care and orphanages and legislative reforms, and produced quite a few shows with my friend Audrey Ann Thomas, who is Assistant District Attorney, Kings County.
Mhm.
And I shared the podium with her late boss, the Honorable Charles Hines, District Attorney, Kings County, and half a dozen civil and criminal court judges. And I spoke about the forming of York College, the city university, and just being involved with, just it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so you got, is that the National Producers Award or the Humanitarian Award?
No, that was a humanitarian award presented at York College for advocating. And I'd also like to extend my condolences to my family and friends and the family and friends of Margo Thunderbird, who I met a few years ago at Richard Oliver's house. He's a Grammy Award-winning producer.
Uh-huh.
And Margo just passed. She was one of the leaders of the Shinnecock
Oh, right, I
Nation.
read it in the paper.
Wonderful,
Yeah, she was
wonderful
great.
friend. And she asked me to be included with the Shinnecocks because I'm sure you're aware of the PBS special called Conscious Point about the desecration of the cemeteries. It's hard to
Yeah,
believe in
it's
this
hard.
day and age there is not a stop work order.
In
And
this day and age, it's only getting worse.
she just recently passed, and she helped me to work on a project that's on Hulu now of a documentary she made about one of the American Indian movement leaders that disappeared, and one of her friends, and she just made that just recently before she passed.
Uh-huh, and where can people see that documentary?
Well, I wrote it down, and I
Do
don't
you
want.
know the name of it?
Yes, I don't, but it's
What?
over there. I'm not going to get up. And
Oh,
get
but
it
it's about the Shinnecock Nation?
now. No, it's about one of her friends that disappeared, And I'll leave it at that for people to see the story, but I'm sure if you could find it about the Shinnecocks and the disappearance.
And Margo Thunderbird,
Margo
could put
Thunderbird.
that into Prime Video or
Right,
whatever and find it.
Right.
Did you see the film about the Bonnickers that Joanne Roberts did?
It was, and when you think about them, the Bonnickers, they were the first families, they were farmers, they were fishermen. And to read this book, Men's Lives, was really incredible, and how
And then they did this show that was so wonderful.
the Montaukets and the Shinnecocks really saved their lives.
Right. Fed them, taught them how to farm.
And well, that was where the moss bunker comes from. It's
moss bunker? What's a moss bunker?
It's the Shinnecock name. It's Monocotothea or something like that. It means that which restores life. They knew to throw the bunker onto the fields, and they showed the Europeans how to harvest the right whales.
So they would throw the whole fish or just the leftovers of what they ate?
Well, that was always composting and recycling.
Yeah.
And where I grew up.
That's why the land was so rich.
Yep, and I grew up on the other end of Long Island Sound in Douglaston, Queens, on Udall's Cove. And
so you grew up near the water.
And on the water, and it goes out to Little Neck Bay, which was famous for the Little Neck clams.
I know Little Neck Bay.
And
I think we used to go, actually, the steamers, we used to go and stick our feet in the mud there when I was a kid.
And they say
that was great.
They were the size of a person's foot. I think that's in the
the razor ones, and there were some big clams for sure.
And those shells out of Little Neck Bay were used for the Iroquois nation for their wampum. And this is, I think it's the opening line of F. Scott Fitzgerald's. It's the 100th anniversary of The Great Gatsby. And he said that when the Europeans came, the oysters were the size of a man's foot.
Oh, that's interesting.
And,
there are some specials on nature, the nature program on PBS, that talk about when the cataclysm happened and the dinosaurs were killed, and it was like 2 years of darkness on the planet, that the creatures that could go into the sea just for 2 years lived in the sea and ate and ate and ate. And they found a skeleton of a snake that was 70 feet long and an alligator that was also 70 feet long. So things were a lot bigger then. And the things that survived.
As we know, the sharks are prehistoric, the horseshoe crabs. And it's just...
And the whales have the whole history of the planet.
And how they communicate. And and the other book that Peter Matheson wrote was Snow Leopard, about his journey up into the Himalayas. And I had a wonderful friend out here, and I was reading this book, and it spoke about the Tamang people. And this was my friend Tara Tamang. That was her family name. And as I read on further, the goddess was Tara. There was a good Tara and a bad Tara. And
like Shakti
and I knew the good Tara.
And Kali.
And I knew the good Tara. And I was on the beach reading this one day, and there was on a Sunday morning.
You took a hardcover to the beach?
From the library. It's in the library. And
no wonder that library's full of sand.
And I went over the dune, and down at the end of Atlantic Avenue was Marine Patrol with the lights on, and a lot of lifeguards were in the water.
Oh, was it a whale?
And I was trained as a little, as a lifeguard. I thought I could volunteer, and I went down, and it was a dolphin. And it was directly in front of my friend Tara's house, where we spent a lot of winters and had a lot of fun. And it had beached itself earlier off Indian Wells, and the Marine Patrol yelled out, let it go.
They put it back in, and then it beached
it was
again?
right there, and the marine biologist said, let it go, there's nothing you can do. So I contacted a lot of my friends to say a prayer. And
prayers work.
And where I was walking down the beach, about 15 minutes later, it swam off. And there was a big cheer, and everybody was applauding. And I like to think that was my friend Tara, because it came down the beach and jumped out of the water in front of me.
That's so
But when you speak about
fun.
nature, how do we know that the geese to fly into formation and the fish to swim, together? Because they communicate. That way. And also, speaking of nature, LTV, if you look in the archives of LTV, there are some great nature shows. and
LTV is the best.
restoring the natural grasses. The
Yeah.
reason that people come
all the
out
pieces
here,
about the aquaponic and everything.
yeah, and the
Well,
reason
that's where Joanne got a lot of the footage for the Bonikers.
and the reason people come out here was for the simplicity.
Yeah.
Now they say 6:30 in the morning over in some of these towns, you can't take a shower because everybody's sprinklers are going off. Everybody's
And out here, the sprinklers are sprinkling the roads half the
in
time.
the rain. And also
In
there
the
was a great,
rain.
remember the Dark Skies Initiative? Turn
Yeah.
off these lights. You go down now, everybody has lights on their trees.
Everything's getting reversed
It's
now.
disrupting the natural habitat. And one of the things that I spoke about at York College when I did receive this humanitarian award were some of my heroes growing up.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was Aurora Rice, who founded the Udall's Cove Preservation Committee. And that was right there on running into Little Neck Bay. And there was also my family doctor, Helen Stofford, and Louise Frischer was the family attorney, and Dr. Rebecca Lansfield, Nobel laureate. And these were all these incredible women that my friend attorney Audrey Ann Thomas asked me to speak about when I received this award at York College, the City University.
You just did a podcast with Charlotte Gabrielle,
Charlotte
who got the
Gabrielle.
Medal of Freedom from President Biden,
Thank
right?
you for bringing that up. And that was from the training that I got here at LTV. From Tony Deck.
Uh-huh.
And how upstairs, and it's funny how things.
Did you do the podcast here?
No, it was up in the city, but it's funny how things come together, because right after I did that, I had this great opportunity, and it was a live podcast. As you said, it went on a little bit too long, but Carla Gabrielle wrote her book,
She was lovely.
I Rise, EYE Rise.
Yeah.
And she was the head of nursing down in Atlanta. And she wrote this fantastic book. She was with her husband, and she received the Presidential Award of Freedom from President Joe Biden.
That's great.
It was really.
That's very exciting.
And that was co-hosted
to go to the White House and everything.
Well,
that's thrilling.
What it's really showing is that, you know, like a small, whether it was my friend Aurora Rice or Carla Gabrielle or even LTV, a small, dedicated group of people, you know, educated about their subject, their topic, and that's why it was always great to go up and see Jay Schneiderman, legislator, and Fred Thiel, and members of the legislation. And, you know, this is a participatory government.
Jay Schneiderman was one of my daughter's teachers when the waterfront school was on the wharf in Sag Harbor, where the gym is now. And we were in competition with Hampton Day School. And Jay Schneiderman was a whistleblower for us because he realized there was some ne'er-do-well stuff going on.
You mean coming up from the water table, from the pollution?
No. Hampton Day School was trying to put us out of business. And we did a SOS committee, Save Our School, and we raised a lot of money, and we got a new headmaster, and we got it all together to save the school. And we still lost it. They just did us in. They infiltrated our school.
And
we were getting a lot of students from Hampton Day. That was like 34 years ago.
What did they want to incorporate your school into theirs? But this is over in Sag Harbor.
This little school in Sag Harbor that was the best. And they were losing a lot of students, and they wanted to shut us down. Yeah, Hampton history. So, but meanwhile, let's get back to you.
But, okay, because I was going to say something about
You were
Jason.
producing a show, and you wound up, they needed you to be an actor on the show called Sister Girls, right? And it's cutting down trees? What's that all about?
And that was the episode, and that was at Queens Public Television. I had volunteered as a producer for a not-for-profit called Sister Girls, and that's CISTA, Commit to Good Health, Invest in Yourself, Share, Team Up, and Actualize a Plan.
And the episode was called Cutting Down Trees?
Yes.
And what was that about? Cutting down trees?
Yes, and what happened is the talent that was supposed to show up, and my friend Lisa Baxter, she has the Lisa Baxter Show and a kidney foundation, and I just did a voiceover for her.
I was going to ask you about that. You do voiceovers too.
And where did I learn how to do voiceovers?
You talk a lot.
Right here,
Oh, okay.
LTV. But with the Lisa Baxter Show, she was the defendant we did a legal show and the talent didn't show up. And I had operated the control room. Once a month I volunteered every Saturday to run the control room, pulling up the lower thirds, the cameras and everything. And the talent didn't show up, and they all pointed at me.
You played the defendant, right?
And they all pointed at me, and they said, "You're going on." And with no script and no rehearsal, we did it.
You were the guilty person, though.
I was the defendant, and
you knew the story.
and I didn't even know.
Did you fight for yourself about cutting down trees?
Well, just one or two lines of it. Lisa Baxter, we're still friends today. She was in the neighborhood and saying, "You're sneaking around," and I actually said, "This is all improv."
Yeah.
I said that
And you won an
no,
award
you have
for
to have
it.
you have to have a permit with the town to cut down trees. You have big noisy trucks, and there's no sneaking around with all this stuff. And is the tree diseased? Is it dying? Is it going to disrupt a gas line? And I grew up in Douglaston, which is a community of devout tree huggers.
Mm.
And some of the oldest ginkgo biloba trees are there in Douglaston.
Oh, we have
And,
ginkgo biloba on Long Island?
Long, super gigantic chestnut trees when I was a kid, the size of a car, and we, and one of my dear friends, Dr. Leo Kellerman, he lost his son, Andy, who was friends with my older brothers, and a memorial to him, he got everybody in the neighborhood to plant trees.
Oh, that's great.
And you'd make a donation, and they'd give you a plaque, and this is a living memorial to
That's
plant trees. And if I can say a little poem by Joyce Kilmer, I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree who lifts her leafy arms to pray and looks at God all day.
Yay.
A tree upon whose mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, that in summer may wear a nest of robins in her hair. A tree upon whose breast snow has lain, who lives intimately with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree.
Well done, well
Oh, yeah.
done. You are a good actor.
Perspiring.
deserve
I'm a
that.
perspiring
You're
actor.
a perspiring actor.
But getting
So,
back to that, it
didn't
was a
you
national
bring-
award, first place at this episode of Cutting Down Trees.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That we dare not cut down trees because, as we know, they communicate through the ground, they communicate through their pheromones,
Yeah,
they
they all
communicate,
talk to each other.
and
And
absolutely.
they give us oxygen. Hello.
Everything,
We
and
couldn't exist without nature.
go hug a tree.
I
know,
watched
as
a PBS special, this lady saving tiny little hummingbirds. It was unbelievable. It's running now on PBS. But yeah, I think you brought some video, a little bit of video from the White Room where we were hanging out
From
the
the
other
White
night. You
Room,
want
and
to show that
also-
now? Some photos that you can explain to us. There it is.
There should
Was
be a little sound. The
great
train came by,
show.
but that's cool.
Great show. It's gonna be running for a
That
couple
was
more days.
Andrea and Kat. There's
Well,
there's Eddie Van
That's
Halen.
not Andrea.
When I was working at the Palladium for Ron Delsner, Van Halen came in there and he was angelical. Eddie Van
He's
Halen,
young,
David
right? He's
Lee
a baby.
Roth, they were great guys. I was working as a loader unloading the trucks, and you would see these well-dressed British rock and roll guys come in there, and they had their beautiful suits on,
They're all dressed up.
and I was, stacking up the amps and everything, and did their sound check. They came back later that night. It was AC/DC, and there was Carlos Santana was there with a great show.
Oh my God, that must have been
And
great.
one night I'm out back loading up the trucks, and this big limousine comes by, and a guy comes out, and it was Gene Simmons, and he was so down to earth, wanted to say hello to everybody, walking around, talking to everybody. But this is Steve's pictures. Steve Yost, that we had a
Steve
ball.
Yost, what a
The
lucky guy
photographer.
to be at all those concerts and up close with all those
And
incredibly
I
talented
just called
musicians.
Ron Delsner just before I came over, and
Today?
here
Oh,
telling him about
What, before you went over there, before you came over
before I
here?
came here today,
Really?
and telling him that I was on my way to see you and to do this show over here, and
You were telling
It was-
him to do the show?
no, I was telling him that I was going to be talking
I
about,
expect him to be here next week.
and it was really great because I had free reign. It was very interesting. I had free reign of the Palladium Theater on 14th Street, which was originally the Academy of Music, and I didn't know my grandfather had built it back in,
Wow.
yeah, he founded the Prudential Realty Company in
Wow.
1640, and he built the Long Island Railroad, the Palladium, the Academy of Music, Tammany Hall, Penn Station, and just for
Wow,
me to
he's a
be
major
there was really.
contractor. So if you want to show the rest of your White Room stuff,
Oh, this
this
is
was
at Queens Public Television,
yeah?
and that is Vera Moore on the left in the white suit,
Uh-huh.
soap opera star for 25 years.
What show?
One of the major ones, I'm sorry I was not
As the world turns, I don't really know
And she
them.
developed she couldn't find the right makeup, and she and her husband developed their own makeup line. And the woman to my immediate left in the middle is one of the Jets coaches for the New York Jets football team.
Mhm.
And the other ladies are business entrepreneurs, and they have a Jamaican, food place, and
And I think you have a poster from the podcast, right? Is that it?
this was on,
That lady has been through a lot, that disbarred but not denied lady.
well, if there's anything, if you know anything about Jamaicans, they're a determined people.
Mhm.
They are really, they are absolutely wonderful.
And she was interviewing the woman that won the
Yes,
uh,
and this,
Medal of Freedom.
and this was at, down at a church in a congregation in Brooklyn, down on East 53rd Street with Reverend Terry Lee, the pastor.
Mhm.
And that was her book release party, and that was the and the 18th of November is the anniversary of the Gettysburg Address, which is still relevant to today. And one
Which you could probably repeat verbatim, right? Because
it's a quick one,
you
if I
know all
may.
that stuff. Well, let's get through the photos and then we can
And
end with the Gettysburg
This
for
is
the 250th anniversary of our country.
this was
Hampton Film Festival.
this is at Colleen McGinnis. I gave her a little bouquet of flowers last year at the Hampton Film Festival. I was an extra in her movie, filled out at John's Hamburger Stand in Montauk.
Uh-huh.
And she is a writer for Saturday Night Live, and she
Wow.
wrote, directed, and produced this short film, Loser. And I didn't know it, but I was also in another film there, and it was called Producer, I'm not too sure, it
The
was originally
Premiere?
Scream.
Oh, I was in Scream. I didn't see you at Scream.
And it was called
The Premiere.
The Premiere, and I was in that one too.
I was in that one. I didn't
And-
see you in that one.
And I was
Okay.
I was in that
We're
also.
both movie stars, folks.
Oh, yeah, really. And this is my
Oh,
friend
Bill Quigley.
Bill Quigley in the middle,
Yeah.
and that's his photographer friend James. They had just done a shoot at an installation down on Further Lane, and Bill was getting out of the ocean on Indian Wells. And when you've been on the beach, Judy, you think somebody's calling you, Judy, and it's just, is it the wind? And it was Bill inviting me to his party. He says, Gordon, are you going to come
He
to my
was calling
opening?
you Judy?
No, the wind, when you hear the wind
I
blowing.
was kidding.
And he goes, Gordon, are you going to come to my party on Saturday? And I said, no. And I walked away, and I was cracking up. I was laughing. And Bill is one of the most generous
He is a lovely,
painters.
lovely person.
And my friend Aaron Monet also exhibited last year with Bill. Aaron's paintings are hanging in Rosie's in Amagansett.
Uh-huh.
And Bill walked in there, and he didn't know that Monet was a painter.
Huh.
And he wrote a little write-up about it, and Aaron's paintings are there. Aaron got a commission at Talk House. He painted up a painting of Talkhouse, and Aaron has done a lot of commissions. He had an opening last year at Eagle Paints, and Bill was incredibly generous.
He is
For
a
him.
very generous person.
And-
So what's on the horizon for you? What are you doing these days?
Well, one of the things that back at one of the other films that I also was involved, talking about plays and humanitarianism, I did a play, a reading of Aristophanes, of Lystrata, from 400 BC.
Wow.
And this was at Sag Harbor.
Yeah.
And this is when the women got together in ancient Greece, and they said, look at, you're taking our husbands, they're coming back 10, 15 years later, and they're crippled, and and you're taking our sons and they're killing them. And this is when they wrote the play, and the women said, no, you have to end this war. And it's still so
Women
relevant
have been
to today.
talking since
Still relevant.
5,000 years ago.
Still
So-
relevant to today.
Oh,
And
we are winding down now, Gordon. Oh, you want to show that book?
and this is Andy Aladort's book. It's right here in the library. Whoops, sorry about that. And Andy, this is a great book for artists, musicians,
Stop wiggling.
and
What's the name title?
Texas Flood. It's about Texas Flood, the biography of Stevie Ray Vaughan.
All
And
right.
Andy was Dickie Betts' lead guitarist for years. And to see Andy come back, his first tour with Dickie Betts at Talkhouse, and really see
At the
an artist
Talkhouse.
reach
And
his
it's a great
fruition.
read, right?
It well written, and it was right here behind me. I just saw it when I was looking around here.
Well, Gordon, we could probably talk for the next 3 years, so.
Thank you for having me, Judy.
you-
What a
You
pleasure.
should come back.
We had so much fun over at
The White House,
the White Room
House.
the
We
White
had
Room
so much fun at
Gallery,
the White House, and then we had fun at the White
and
Room.
we met over at Ashwan Hall, the
Yeah.
big party. That was so
Art
much fun.
Groove. Always
That was
great.
so much fun.
Always a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
Gordon Kelly, very nice to have you.
Thank you
Come
so
back.
much.